This episode of Ticket Volume is brought to you by us, InvGate. Get service operations under control in no time. Get 1 free month of our software solution by going to try.invigate.com. Ticket Volume is proud to present the founder of Support Human LLC, who specializes in building support and knowledge functions from scratch and flipping them into efficient, sustainable, well-oiled machines. Their newsletter and podcast, Bad Job Bingo, curates helpful content and job posting advice all in one. They've also served as both a fractional and full-time head of support, collaborating closely with executive teams to assess support needs, identify and mitigate risks, and develop tailored support strategies. Our second guest most recently served as the Deputy Group CIO at Baxter's Food Group and consolidated and modernized IT services and systems across 10 sites in 5 countries. They're passionate about driving organizational transformation initiatives that maximize team potential and enhance user satisfaction. They've got a proven track record in leading successful change. He's streamlined processes, boosted efficiency, and cultivated a culture of innovation through strategic digital transformation. Welcome to Ticket Volume, news and information for improving IT experiences. I'm your host, Matt Barron, and I am so lucky to be your host. And on each episode, I get to chat with different leaders to share their insights on service management, technology, support, service, business. And this episode is going to be more green lights. And hey, do you want to continue the conversation after this episode? Comment on YouTube, Spotify, or if you're already on Spotify, check out the surveys that we're putting on our podcasts. I didn't even know Spotify had that. Check out your other podcasts too and see if they've got surveys. Anyway, use these options to dig deeper into this topic, or just tell me I've got food in my teeth. So I hope you're having a great day and week, and I also hope that you'll leave a comment, connect with us, or share our podcast with someone. Get involved, get us improving. Welcome to Ticket Volume, Stephanie Lundberg and David Lowe.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Quite an introduction today. I am so glad that you both took the time to talk about this very important topic. And I feel the need to put a disclaimer right at the beginning for this and our next podcast, which you'll have to stay tuned for. But this podcast specifically, we don't have all the answers. And in the job market, the more resources you can leverage, the more opinions you can get. Usually it's the better. Sometimes there's some bad advice out there. But if you're not finding help, look around. There's a huge community of people that are trying to get hired. And all of us are among the candidates. So let's talk about the job market right now. Is the job market good? David, go.
So I've been in the job market multiple times in the last 10 years, and I'd say it's been worse, but it's not fantastic. It's not this garden where you can go and find what you're looking for readily and easily. There is a lot of bloat out there in the job boards. There is a lot of ambiguity, and it takes persistence, and it takes a lot of self-confidence to keep going.
Steph, what do you think? You see a lot of the job postings out there, and I think you help a lot of people actually find roles. What do you think about the job market right now?
I think it's better than it was last year, but we're not back to not healthy yet, right? Like we're not to the point where someone can leave a role confident that they can find another role within 2 or 3 months even.
Yeah.
I think the frustrating that I see a lot is that last year, I think it was probably safe to describe the tech job market as a bloodbath. There was a lot of people being laid off. We were flooded with very, very talented people. Everybody was looking for a job at one time. And I think companies have since, unfortunately, sort of taken advantage of that in a way. So I have seen a lot of, and it's not just me. I think everybody who's kind of in this space has seen sort of the same thing. People who are looking at job listings because they have their own job board, whatever it is, they're trying to identify trends. A lot of things that I'm seeing are companies are listing job descriptions that they have no intention of filling, but it makes them look more successful. It makes them look more appealing to investors potentially, because we all know that investor money has dried up a lot in the last 1 to 2 years. And so if it looks like you're hiring at a pretty quick pace, then you are going to be more attractive to investors. And so it is not unusual for me to see, and I have some jobs on my website right now for support and IT folks that have been open since January of this year, and I do not see them closing anytime soon, because the idea isn't necessarily to fill the role. The idea is to make it look like you're hiring. So that's a big bad trend that I've seen. Another trend that I've seen are I want to say there's a word that I'm looking for and it's not coming to me. This is going to bug me. Predatory. I've seen a lot of predatory companies take advantage of employees, or not employees, but I've seen a lot of predatory companies take advantage of job seekers who desperately need jobs. And so we have a lot of scam job descriptions out there. And we've also seen just employers who are not behaving well. Like, they don't really necessarily care about the people who work for them. And so they have like really horrible job conditions. They have really horrible cultures. And it comes across very clearly in the job descriptions that they list. So, and we can talk about later ways of identifying those companies and avoiding them. But that's another thing that I've seen. And of course, like scammers are out there. It's been really bad recently, of like people getting personal information, getting financial information from people, stringing them along, knowing that they were never going to get a job. Is just kind of a way of getting attention or whatever they want out of this particular candidate. Anyway, so that's what I've seen, which is all very depressing. So let's go on the other side of that. That's the depressing side of it. So let's do the better side of it. I've also seen, because I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, and I used to do a good news section of the newsletter. It's now moving over to the Elevate CX newsletter, so it's not going away. It still exists. But as part of that, I like to celebrate people who have gotten new jobs or have been promoted in their jobs, who have got certifications in their jobs. And I've seen a lot more of that in the last 4 or 5 months. I've seen the pace of people getting hired go up. I've seen the pace of people getting promoted go up, which is all very encouraging. And so I think there are things that we all need to be aware of in the job market. Like, the job market is definitely not 100%, but it's not nearly as bad as it was last year. I think there's reason to hope. I think the trend is going in a direction we want it to go. So that's my take.
Wow. So much there, Stephanie.
Yes. So sorry.
I think the statistic I heard was almost 500,000 tech workers were laid off between 2023 and 2024. So I think it's around 130,000 this year so far.
Yeah.
And holy dark pattern, Batman.
Yes.
Had no idea that companies would put job postings out there not intending to fill them. That is just a new level of low that I did not think we would ever get to. And yes, the scams are out there. I'm not even looking for a job, and I get a random text message probably once a week where they ask, "Hey, are you willing to work? Guess what? We're going to pay you $250,000. Sign
Isn't that
up."
great? Sign up now. All we need is a foundational payment of $200.
Yeah, exactly. So David,
yeah.
have you been scammed at all? Have you found any of these dark patterns when you've been hunting?
So absolutely. There are definitely jobs I have applied for and even interviewed for that it was pretty apparent that they were just kind of sampling the market and not really looking for a commitment, just by the sheer vagueness of answers to any questions. And maybe that's their hiring policy. Maybe they stay vague to stay mysterious, but the perception from the outside as an interviewee is that they don't have their things together and that they're not serious about the process.
Yeah.
And scamming. Oh, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Emails. I get text messages. I don't know how they have my cell phone number. WhatsApp messages, direct messages in LinkedIn. Yeah, it's prevalent everywhere.
It's out
probably a few times a week.
Yeah.
Dang, dude. Okay, so what is our perception? Like, why is this? Is it just the layoffs? Is that what's happening? Is it AI? Is it remote work? What is actually, like, do you have an inclination to what is causing this? Anyone?
I do. And
Okay.
I will talk forever, but I wanted to give Dan a chance
No,
to talk
jump
before I
in,
hop
jump in, please.
So I think it is a combination of all three. So
Yeah.
I think you had I also think that there are a couple of other things at play here, and this is me. If you read the newsletter or spend any time following me on LinkedIn, you know that I'm very, very critical of tech founders. I want to see more accountability than I have seen. And I have a TikTok where I joke like some of my best friends are tech founders, so I'm not discriminatory against them. Um, but like what started this problem to begin with is that there were investors out there who just had too much money and they were willing to throw it at anything that moved, whether or not those products or those tech founders were going to ever be profitable, whether or not the tech founders knew what they were doing. And so we have this like a concept of like little tech. We can go into that phrase later. We'll get into that, just kind of unrelated, but we have this concept of tech that the people who start companies, they're very brave. They should be commended for putting themselves out there and using their own resources to do that. Like that is something that should be commended. But that doesn't mean they know what they're doing. It doesn't mean that they're going to build a company that lasts or a product that works or that will, again, ever be profitable. And so that's kind of what started this whole ball rolling, is that we had a very large bubble that got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then a couple of years ago, we saw that pop, right? Like with economic conditions, with the pandemic. And, we saw Silicon Valley Bank explode or implode, rather, however you want to say that. We saw some crypto companies implode, and that also kind of rippled out into the tech world because there was a lot of overlap there. And so as all of that happened, right, so you have economic factors for why there were a bunch of layoffs, so genuine economic factors, but you also have tech founders who had no idea what the fuck they were doing. And we were always going to get to this point, right? There was always going to be a point where they were going to have to put up or shut up, right? Like the product was going to have to work or the product was going to have to be profitable. And that was just never going to happen. So we were always going to get to this point. It sucks, but it's true. And instead of these tech founders doing what they needed to do, which is take pay cuts, right? Reduce in other ways, anything, literally anything other than what they are currently doing, which is just laying off people, right? Like that's the go-to. Some of these companies like Google, there's a lot of speculation that they're preemptively laying people off so that their books look better because suddenly you have a lot more cash flow when you don't have to pay for people, right? So that's also it. I also think return to work is a little bit at play here. And I think part of this is a shift in power, and a part of this is truly, an economic problem, right?
Yeah.
So you need people have butts in seats when you're paying rent, right? And so if those people aren't willing to come back to work, you're going to lay them off, and you're going to find people who are willing to do that. I also think that what the pandemic showed us is that you can be at home. Like people can work very effectively remotely. And that shifted power slightly away from centralized managers and to remote workers. And that is something that a lot of companies are very, very uncomfortable with. And so they will do whatever they can to kind of shift the power back to centralized management, which again, I could talk forever about that. So I think I touched on all of the things I think that were influencing that. So like genuine economic issues, tech founders who didn't know what they were doing, products that were never going to be profitable, and the pandemic itself and the shift in power that kind of resulted from that.
Great answer. So much in there I haven't thought about. And I just wrote down in big capital letters, capitalism.
Basically, yeah. Late stage capitalism, everybody. Yay.
Even those startups and those founders that built something that was successful, the ultimate intention is not to grow a mega company and become super successful.
Right.
Seek equity to do hyper growth. And then the play for equity is then eventually acquisition.
Yeah, exactly.
And if that doesn't happen, they fold them. And so I'm in Columbus, Ohio, and we've seen that. Numerous companies that grew massively in 2 or 3 years, hundreds of employees, and either collapse because they can't make it to profitability or they can't make it to a place where equity is going to continue to invest to get them to a sale, or they get bought out by a mega company and they bought them for the value of their IP or their process or their brand. And then all those people that inflated and grew with that small company are then reduced.
Yeah. Wow. I totally agree with that. And there's another kind of factor there that that David kind of hints to is that, I think this is a very, very small part of it, but we've seen, um, like Notion, for instance, a couple of weeks or a couple of months ago, they bought Skiff, I think is the name of the company. And the speculation at the time was that they bought it just to eliminate a competitor, right? And so you have companies like Notion who are able to do this. You have Google that's able to do this. They'll buy companies all the time just to eliminate a competitor. Like they have no intention of really developing the product the company produced or anything like that. It was just to get them off the market, right? And so I think that's a very, very small number of like the layoffs that we've seen, but I think that is probably also a factor of just companies that are able trying to eliminate competition where they can.
Wow. It's just unreal. It is totally unreal to think about it in terms like this because it feels like when you're sitting in macroeconomics in your first year of college and you're like, wait, we have to think bigger? What's going on?
Yeah.
It's totally disorienting to say the least. So I would love to know, like, where do people, like, I remember monster.com ads on the radio all the time. And I remember jobs.com and all these job posting companies. Where do people go to look for work now? Is monster.com still a thing? David, where are you looking for work right now?
So through trial and error, I focus on 3 sites. I use LinkedIn because it's the primary professional network. Indeed, in pieces based on certain searches, and Glassdoor just for their ability to see a lot of reviews. There are some very candid, very helpful reviews in there that have guided me on whether or not to apply or continue applying with some companies.
Great. Good tip. Steph, what do you think? Where are people going? What is, like, if you were going to choose one spot to pay attention to find a job, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. I am going to defy this with a bad answer. I'm sorry.
Love it.
It sort of depends on what you're looking for, right? If you're looking for a remote role, I think probably right now, some of the best ones is like We Work Remotely,
Yeah.
or Remotive. Those are 2 really good ones if you're looking for a purely remote role, and that's across disciplines, right? Like whatever role you're looking for, that's a good place. If you're specifically IT or support, right now, I think probably the best place to look is in a community. I don't think a job board is going to be, if you're actually looking for meaningful connections that are going to actually result in a job, I would say Support Driven is a really good one. Elevate CX is a really good one. Like I'm really involved in Elevate CX. Those are the 2 main ones that I can think of right now. And there's very active jobs board channels in both of those places. And so they will pull those jobs from all these different sites and into this one channel. But the upside of that is then you have people who work at these companies possibly, or people who can make connections with people who work at the companies. And that is what I would really recommend is maybe don't focus on a specific website, but find an active community instead. And that would be the way to find a job and look that way. If you're looking for like tech, like general tech, OTTA, and that's OTTA.com is a really good one. I say they claim, not because I'm skeptical, Betty. Like I'm always skeptical of everybody.
Yep.
And so they claim to read every job description that goes on, or they vet every company on the website. I don't know if that's true. You'd have to look at it. But they do have some good ones. Like they do have, and then I will of course do my thing and do Bad Job Bingo on top of them. But yeah, OTTA is really good if you're looking specifically for tech work or startups, growth stage companies. That's a really good place for that. I'm trying to think. Have I missed any, David? Have I?
No, but I would say to not wait until you are looking for a job to get involved in communities and network and build out your professional connections.
Yes, very much so.
You have to make hay when the sun is shining, and I think you do that when you're at your most successful and at your most active inside of your role. So starting that as early and as often as you can, and being a voice and meeting people and connecting, I think it's vitally important all through your career, and don't just wait until you're in a position where you need a job.
Yeah, it's really, really good advice.
If you take one thing from this podcast, that is it. That really is it. And it's something that I'm so glad one of my early mentors taught me. just always be networking constantly. And she warned me. She said it's going to be a lot of work, and you're a sloppy extrovert, so it's going to be a lot of problems for you too. But in reality, you're going to need these people, and she was not wrong. And
I'll
this
tell
is a
you
good
them.
transition, actually, to talk about Bad Job Bingo, because you're looking on these sites and you're reading all these job descriptions, or you're on LinkedIn and someone says, "Hey, I'm hiring, and here's the job description." How do you spot a good one from a bad one, Steph?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. And one of the things I like to say about Bad Job Bingo is that
It's
I
fun.
it's fun. And
Yeah.
I always caution that there's a lot actually. A large factor of this is entertainment value, right?
Yeah.
Because the job seeking process is just so dispiriting. And like David, before we started recording, made a really good point that it's very dehumanizing, right? Like it makes you just it makes you feel like an object, right? Because you have to like sell yourself, and it's gross, right? It's not a great feeling. And so there has to be an element of entertainment. Otherwise, just what the fuck it's just not worth it, right? Anyway, so there's a certain element of entertainment. There's also, keep in mind that when I'm doing Bad Job Bingo, I try to keep it. It's not objective. That's bullshit. I'm not even going to claim that. It's definitely not objective. But I do try to keep it as universal as I possibly can. But I'm still approaching it from my perspective, right? So what is helpful or what is a good culture signal is for me is not necessarily going to be for you. And so
Yeah.
when I do Bad Job Bingo, that's why I try to go into my reasoning. Like I'll joke around a lot about why stuff is gross, but I do try to explain why I gave a job a certain rating or why I thought something was a flag. And that way you can kind of have an idea of what works for you, what doesn't. So with that caveat, there are some things that I see, trends that I see in almost every job description, that I always want to be careful of. One is fast-paced environment, because it's such a cliche at this point, and it's one of those culture signals where, you know, the company doesn't have things together. They don't know maybe they don't have good product market fit. Maybe they don't have a good roadmap. Maybe they don't have a good values alignment for the company yet. Maybe things just change like so fast. And like that might mean your job description is changing without any kind of consultation to you or without any notice. It could mean your boss changes. It could be your team changes. Like fast paced environment is like this horrible catch-all cliche. And if the company can't, it's not a red flag unless the company can't explain what that means, right?
Mhm.
If they're able to say, hey, look, we are moving so fast right now that you're just going to have to be really comfortable with a lot of ambiguity. You're going to have to be comfortable with your manager possibly changing. You're going to have to be comfortable with your role description changing. And we're not going to be able to give you a lot of notice. And some people really love that. Some people thrive in that environment, but they have to be able to articulate that, right? Like, so whenever I see that and they don't explain what that means, that's a red flag.
Got it. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a really good way, and I see it constantly in everything, and it's so frustrating. Um, and I think some of the other ones that I see are just a lot of ableist stuff. Like you have to have high energy. They try to prescribe what personality you should have.
Oof.
There's some just really odd ones.
Yeah.
But like that's getting kind of into the weeds, and I should back it up a little bit because we talked a little bit more ahead of time. Is that I offer this Bad Job Bingo to Go card that you can customize for yourself, right? Because I sort of started with the caveat, like everything's coming from my perspective. What works for me may not work for you. So like take some time and sit down, look at the Bad Job Bingo entries that I give you and see which one of those resonate with you, and then add stuff that I don't add, right? Add your own red flags, add your own green flags, add your own yellow flags. And then once you have that kind of set for yourself, then as you're going through job listings and you're applying and you're actually interviewing, like remember, prioritize anything that makes you feel like you have power over the process, right? Because I was 8 months into my job hunt and like I felt miserable. Like, I was just as miserable as anybody was, but every time I joined a new interview, it was always forefront in my mind that I was interviewing this company as much as they were interviewing me. Like they're not giving me a job out of the goodness of their hearts, right? Like I am showing up and I am earning it. I have the skills that they need, and
Mhm.
if they want those skills, they should be able to treat me well and show me that there is a
They
career
will.
there.
They
Yes,
will.
Yeah.
exactly.
Because they need
They
you.
will. Exactly. So, like when you're in this process, it is very easy to kind of for companies to put you on your back foot, right? Like to put
Mhm.
you on the defensive, and to just make you feel very small. And
Right.
and
Sell
it's very,
yourself. Sell me
yeah,
the Tell me why you're the
exactly.
person for this role. Yeah.
Exactly. It's very, and it does a number on your sense of self and your mental health, and it's just
Mm.
not great. And so I would just recommend as much as you can, because we're human, right? Support human. We're human, so this is very hard, but reframe it in your mind, right? Like they have a problem, and there's an actress from Game of Thrones who talks about this when she's going to do auditions. She's like, they have a problem and you
Mhm.
are the solution, right? They want you to be the solution, so show them how you can be the solution, right? So that should be part of the dynamic, but also make them work for it.
Yeah.
Don't just take anything.
That's a
Yeah.
great point. That is a question I try to ask in every interview is what not only why are you hiring? Was someone
Mhm.
let go? Is this something new? But what problem are you trying to solve?
Yes.
Why are you looking for someone? Why aren't you promoting someone from within? Why aren't you building this skill on your own?
Mhm.
And generally, if you're interviewing with someone who has some ethics, they'll be pretty honest with
Yes.
you because they want to know that you can fill that need.
Yeah.
And as funny as it is, you talked about we spoke earlier just before we started recording and how dehumanizing this is.
Mhm.
It is, and you're totally right. With take control of the process, set some ground rules and set expectations. I'm
Yep.
very, very clear in interviews when I start asking questions that I am trying to find out that is this a good fit for me as much as am I going to meet your needs?
Yeah.
Yes.
And I ask some very complicated questions that are around not technical things. I can teach almost anyone the technology that they need to do their job,
Mhm.
but I can't teach someone the implicit skills that they need to have to be really successful in what they do,
Yeah.
whether that is having empathy or some IQ or just being interested in what they're doing and having a connection to the work that they're doing and the delivery of that.
Yeah.
People deliver their best work when they care and they understand how their small piece contributes to something larger in the overall success of an organization and that they have a commitment to making that successful.
Oh,
Yeah.
can I get an amen?
Amen.
Yeah.
Hallelujah. No, I totally agree. I think that's fantastic. Yeah, and I had a follow-up and I don't remember what it was, but that was excellent.
Well,
It's
you were
funny that
talking about agency and how. Talk about that a little bit. What is agency, and why do people looking for a job need to have it?
Yes. So the thing about being laid off is that it totally fucks with your head,
Yeah.
right? So immediately when you were laid off, you feel like, even if you saw it coming, right?
Yeah.
Like
it's a
even if you
loss of
saw it coming,
control.
yeah, it's a
It's a
loss of
complete
control, and you don't
just
have,
vacation of any control of anything to do with your life,
yes,
your job, potentially your safety in your home,
yes,
providing for your family, your ability to have self-worth if you derive any of that from your job.
hmm,
It's gone in a moment. And
yes.
you have to mourn that a little bit before you can move on, and that's very difficult to do.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, David. I don't know why you're asking me about that. Ask him. No. Yeah,
That's so
absolutely.
good.
So I don't know that I have anything to add to that. And I think that's partially why you also need an outlet. Like it doesn't have to be bad job bingo. Like I'd love it if it was, because that's why I make it. Like there should be an outlet for some of the frustration that people feel at being so powerless over their own jobs, right? Like over their own livelihoods, and being able to take care of their families, provide for their families, and having a roof over your head. Like there needs to be an outlet for that. So it can be bad job bingo. I would love that, but like if it's not bad job bingo, let it be something else.
Yeah.
Find
Right.
something else that you have agency over. For me, that
Anything
was, yeah. Go
that
ahead.
builds that the mental fortitude that you're going to need to get through this and bringing some levity to it is important.
Yes. Yes.
Whether it's bad job bingo or calling someone that understands and talk to people that have been in similar situations, getting some positive affirmations. I mean, the whole problem with layoffs is my wife's in mental health, so I hear about things like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it messes with that foundation that you've
Yes.
built. And your structure might be this big or this big, but if you take a block out at the bottom, the whole thing can tumble.
Yes.
And so you have to be ready to rebuild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was 2 or 3 months into my job search and was not doing great. And that's why I started the newsletter. That's why I started writing, because I needed something that I had control over, that was just me, that nobody else could tell me not to do, that I could be as contrarian and sarcastic and snarky as I wanted to be. And that really worked for me. That just, even though like I didn't get another job for like 6 months after that, it was still something that let me have that outlet. It gave me some way to feel productive, like I was adding, and also like it made me feel like I was helping other people, which for me, work is a big part of my identity, but also being useful is a big part of my identity. I need to feel like I'm being useful. And so being able to rate jobs and help people find a better fit or avoid bad fits, like that was something that really made me feel useful. And so that was really, really important. So my advice for you while you're looking, it will also is to find something that will be that for you, but it will also help you with confidence when you are looking. So that because at some point when you're 1,000 applications in, everything is a slog. You lose the ability to be to care about stuff. Like you lose the ability to you're sending an application and you just mentally, emotionally cannot care whether or not it actually goes through, because if you have like one more disappointment, like you're just going to collapse, right? And so that's why it's so important to find an outlet, because at that point in your journey, it will let you care still, right? You'll have the ability to like manage your emotions a little bit better. And it's not 100% for everybody. It won't even be 100%, even if you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing. Like if you still feel like shit, like you're not doing anything wrong. This is just because everything is shitty, right?
That professional outlet is important. It especially, I derive value from being good at what I do as well. That's an important part of me.
Yeah.
But you also have to continue with the things in your life outside of work that add emotional strength and an outlet, a place for you to still be you and get some socialization. Looking for a job is a very private thing. It is something that you do alone in front of a computer screen for hours and hours and hours every day. And it's you can get mired into that. It's like a bog. And you have to give yourself permission to step away from that and still enjoy things in life, even though you're struggling over here. You have to still have some social engagement if that is something that builds you up. Have a hobby that you still dedicate time and resources to. That is just as important as going and finding that job, because that's all for your mental health.
Yeah.
And without that, you're not going to be your best self in those interviews.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to follow up on that and be like, ask for help from your network. That's why what you said earlier is don't wait until you need a job to start networking, but actually ask for help, rely on them, because even other people who are in the same boat as you will have something to give, and you will have something to give them. When I think a month or two before I finally got my job, I was in the final rounds of an interview for a director position, and they wanted a presentation. And I was like, I need someone to practice this presentation on, because I have no objectivity anymore. I've lost all ability to read at this point. So I need someone else to take a look at this. And so I went to a group of ladies in my network, and some of them were working, some of them weren't. And I was like, hey, can I give a mock presentation to you and get your feedback? And some of them were at the director level, which was wonderful, and some of them weren't, which was also wonderful. And so they were able to, we just had a kind of a Zoom meeting where I offered the presentation. They gave me feedback. And I didn't end up getting that job, but I went in, I was so confident. I felt so good about it. And when I didn't get it, I was really confident. It was because it's because I wasn't a good fit. They found somebody who was a better fit, not because I didn't do my best or because I failed at something. And that was a huge help. And so and then after that, I found there was kind of this follow-on effect where other people, when they had a job, like a job interview, we would do mock job interviews for them. And so definitely people want to help you, let them help you. And, and not just once, more than once,
Right.
because you're going to ask once, you're going to feel like, okay, I've used up my chit for the year. Like I don't get no more help for the year. It's all done.
The other important thing about asking for help is you're modeling good behavior.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
So you're telling other people
Mhm.
explicitly
Mhm.
that it's okay to ask for help, and they know that they can ask you when they need help.
Yes, absolutely.
And so again, it's a private thing. You get sucked in. You're in front of this screen all day, and it's just you against the words on the screen.
Yeah.
There are communities, there are people that are very willing to help, that are very willing to talk to you, just even if it's a sounding board to vent and
Yeah.
share what you're going through. One of the other big, so you talked about not getting the job. One of the other big things that, gosh, it kills me is ghosting.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that. Yeah,
So
we
being
should
in the
talk about that.
process of having a relationship and building a connection with the people that you're speaking with,
Mhm.
and then they drop off the face of the earth.
Yeah. Yeah. That is
And-
another trend that I have seen for sure.
And that is a them problem, not a you problem. And you have to be
Exactly.
strong enough to keep going and not let that tear you down.
Dodged a bullet.
Yeah.
It isn't necessarily, not all good companies have good onboarding processes, but you can still judge them by their onboarding processes.
Oh,
'cause
absolutely.
They
Yeah.
haven't taken the time to get them to be better. And I love this because you need to give your network the gift of being, of giving back to you.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like that in the moment. It feels like you're asking for something, but in reality, you're giving them the opportunity to be helpful. And especially in our industry, that's a big deal. Most of us are driven on the fact that we can help people.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got one more topic that we're going to touch on, and that is how to stand out. What tips or advice, and it doesn't have to be how to stand out, but what advice would you give to people that are looking for jobs right now? And we'll start with you, David. Mr. Lowe, did we lose you? Mr. Lowe?
Maybe.
Oh, I think he's
Oh.
frozen.
I can see him blinking.
And my audio is still going. You can still hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. So, Steph, what advice would you give to people that are looking for a job right now, generally? How can they stand out? What's going to improve their chances of getting recognized and getting an interview?
Yeah. I'm going to be, I think David will have probably much much better advice than I do because I'm very contrarian on this subject. I think that most people are going to put their best foot forward already. They're going to be themselves. They have done literally everything that they can by the time they get to the point of an interview. And so I would like to okay. Oh, he's lost audio. Okay.
Yeah. We can hear you. I think we
pause.
can hear you, David.
He may not be able to hear us. He must
I
not
just
be able
heard
to
some
hear us.
music. Okay, keep going.
Okay. I might actually start over. All right. So I think David
Start
will
over.
probably have some better advice on this than I do. Because I am not the best person to ask this question. I tend to be very contrarian. I think there's a lot of bad advice, particularly around this subject, especially on places like LinkedIn. There's a
Yep.
lot of predatory behavior around this question as well on places like LinkedIn and other places. So LinkedIn, you see coaches who sell packages and are basically negging people into buying their package so they can be coached into standing out in interviews, or buy my course that is the only course you will ever need, and in 12 months from now you'll have a job, which but it's just most people by the time they get to the interview process, they will be doing everything that they can, right? They will be themselves. They will highlight their experience. They'll focus on stats to show how they've moved the needle in their
Yeah.
position or for their company. They know what to do, right? You know what to do as a person. At this point, I think it's probably not on you anymore to stand out, right? It's on the company to. You can only do so much, so it's on the company
Yeah.
to recognize what makes you a good fit, right? And if they don't do that, it's because they're not skilled hiring managers. They don't actually know what they're looking for in the role. They don't actually have an intention of hiring into the role. So like it's a number of factors that have nothing to do with you, right? At that point. And so especially in a market like this, where all the power is generally in like companies' hands, there's only so much you can do, and I'm gonna guess that you're already doing it.
Yeah.
And so I always just want to tell people, kind of give them permission to take that burden off themselves, right? Of like, what possibly more can I do to stand out, to
Yeah.
sell myself? And the answer is probably nothing.
Yeah.
Which is very, very frustrating. It doesn't like help you, because you want to do something, right? You want to be able to like put your best foot, like what can you do to like fix this? And when the answer is probably not much, it kind of sucks. But it also sort of frees you up to just do what you need to do. Interview the company, make sure it's a fit for you, and if you weren't a fit for them, it was probably out of your hands to begin with. So that's my
Yes.
advice.
What advice would you give to people that are interviewing right now or trying to get into a job? What advice would you give them as far as like standing out? How do you get that interview now?
So my process. So this is what works for me. This is unique to everybody. It depends on how outgoing you are, how comfortable you are being proactive. Um, I have a lot of extroverted tendencies, and so I am comfortable with just reaching out. And I start by finding a job that I'm interested in. I learn a little bit about the company, and I end up applying for a job. If they don't list a recruiting contact on the job itself, I start by going and looking at the job on LinkedIn, looking at the employees for that company, and I search for job titles like talent and recruiter and human resources. And I'm looking for director level roles or senior director level roles. So I'm generally trying to reach out to the manager of, talent management or the director, and I start there. If they mention in the job description what part of the organization the job is inside of, so reports to the IT director, reports to the CTO, reports to CFO, reports to whoever, I go find that person too. And I reach out, and I have a half a dozen different snippets of comments that I'll put out there that I'll use to reach out and make a connection, introduce myself, offer to answer any questions, and talk about how what I do aligns with what they're looking for.
Yeah.
To make that a little easier, I pay for LinkedIn Premium, and this is not an advertisement for that.
You don't get a kickback?
No, but what it does get you is more characters in those messages.
That's true. Yes.
So at the free tier, you get 200 characters, and it is hard to be succinct and clear in 200 characters. So I get 300. It gives me another sentence to say what I'm trying to say, and that adds value for me.
Awesome. That's really good advice. Yeah.
And the nice part is when they accept, you get notified because you're sending a connection request. And if they look at your profile, you can see that in the tracking data inside of LinkedIn. So it gives you a little bit of clandestine feedback on how that tactic is working for you.
Good advice.
I knew you'd have good advice. Yeah. And sort of to piggyback on what David's saying, it's just exactly what he was saying basically, is that I've realized the last several jobs that I've gotten was not through pure applying. It was because I knew somebody who knew somebody maybe, or I knew somebody at the company and they referred me. And so really, really, really leverage your connections. That is one thing that you can do. And it's not necessarily about standing out. It's just about making that personal connection that David was talking about, right? Like it's a lot easier to make a case for how you can be instrumental in like really, really helping the company if you already know somebody there who can also help like make the case on your behalf. And so I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And that's one of the things I look at when I'm going and looking for those people and finding those people in those roles, looking at if I know any of their connections. The IT world is big. It is not that big, especially if you're looking something in a geographic region. When you start networking and getting to know people in other organizations and through professional associations, that world shrinks a little bit with each one of those. And so then I'll reach out. Hey, Bob, I see that you're friends with this person. I'm trying to contact them about a job. Do you really know them, or is it just some connection from something on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
And if they know them, I am not afraid to ask, can you make an introduction?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think no one I've met so far, and I certainly don't. If I reach out to them and ask, hey, do you have a connection? Or somebody reaches out to me and asks, do you have a connection? I'm always happy to find out. I'm always happy to like refer them, to email on their behalf. Always love to do that because, one, I know a lot of really, really awesome, talented people. And I think if companies can get access to them, all the better for the company. And also like people have done it for me. And so I will never turn them down. And I've never met somebody who turned me down from that. They might say, hey, I don't know them that well. Or I'm like, I don't know you well enough to make a recommendation, but I'm happy to make a connection.
Yeah.
So that might be an answer. Like I don't know you well enough to recommend you, but I'm happy to connect you with this person and then kind of see where it goes from there.
Yeah. And referrals, I want to give some advice on referrals. A referral is not a sure thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when I'm hiring, when I am looking to find new people to join my organization, if one of my staff, and it might be the most glowing referral I've ever heard, this is the greatest person I have ever worked with. That is you skip the process of being screened by an HR person, and you're going to talk to someone.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that is really the most you should ever expect out of a referral.
Yeah.
Someone has advocated and said, get them past the chaff.
Yeah.
At least start the conversation with them.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that because that's another thing that's really tough on people's mental health is like, I got a referral and then I didn't get hired. Like, what was wrong with me? And the answer is that probably nothing was wrong with you. It just wasn't a good fit, right? Like your experience didn't fit.
Or you took it for granted and your attitude wasn't what they were looking for.
Maybe.
Totally.
He's good.
It's awesome.
A tiny sprinkle on top of what you're delivering.
Yeah.
A lot of cocky is off-putting.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. That's a good tip. And I think if you are referring people, if you're one of those people that's ushering in someone to join the new hire process, if you know your organization's onboarding systems and processes are garbage, try to do your best to improve that experience because you don't want to dehumanize
and when you're giving
friends.
a referral, the way I've always told my people is I am always going to take a referral, but that referral is a reflection on you. So if you're going to put your name on them, understand that they represent you.
Yeah. The other thing that I found,
I try to be respectful of that when someone gives me a referral.
Yes.
And someone says, "Oh, David, this might be a great position for you. Let me go introduce you."
Yeah.
That they're putting themselves on the line for you a little bit. That is more than just a connection.
It matters how you behave. Yeah.
They're vouching for you. Right.
That goes both ways. I've had companies that I've made referrals to and then the experience for the candidate was awful. And I was like, and I felt terrible. And I told my company, like, I'm never making another referral unless this changes because, I am putting myself on the line for the company. Like my reputation is tied to your reputation. And if you treat this referral, who in a lot of cases, they're actually really, really great and known in the field. If you treat them badly, that gets out. Like, I don't think you understand the field is large in many ways.
That world isn't
also
that
very
big.
small and very in lots of ways. And people talk to each other. And I tell this to companies all the time, just as like advice. Like if you treat candidates badly, if you treat employees badly, if you have misbehaving internal leadership, any kind of misbehaving, that will get out. We all talk to each other. Like people will know. That does not like that is you can never ever hide that ever. It always comes out at some point. And so and your reputation in this field is very, very important, right? It's very fragile. And it's true for employees as much as companies. So anyway, it's very important.
Well, I'm always mystified by companies that provide goods and services inside the tech sector itself. So when they're interviewing a technical person, they're interviewing a potential future customer.
Yes,
and when that process is poor or the communication is poor or it's left inappropriately or not in a way that's very professional, they're impacting their future. I have interviewed for companies that started very well and it did not end well. The impression was very poor. And I will likely not buy their goods or services without a compelling reason in the future.
Bingo.
Yeah.
That is the quote of the episode. It matters how you behave. Personally, at an individual level and organizationally as a group of people, how you behave is how you are perceived. I love it. What a great episode. You two brought the heat. I am impressed beyond my wildest dreams. Steph, how can people get in contact with you and learn more?
Yeah, they can go to my website. It's supporthuman.cx. They can check out my newsletter. If you're interested in Bad Job Bingo or my very snarky takes on the latest in tech, and I usually focus on accountability in tech, you can find that at newsletter.supporthuman.cx. I also have a job site. So if you're looking and you want a little bit of outlet for entertainment or frustration, or you genuinely want to find a job that fits for you, you can go to jobs.supporthuman.cx.
I love it. There's such good things to have. Even if I think if you're a recruiter or a hiring manager, you must read Bad Job Bingo at least once. And if you're ever going to look for a job or want to be employed in your future, you should read Bad Job Bingo at least once, because you learn so much about language and what it says about a culture. I have to take my hat off to you, Steph. Absolutely fantastic work. Mr. David Lowe, how can people get in touch with you and learn more?
Sure. So LinkedIn is probably the easiest place. Most of us are there already. And if you're watching this and you're a fan of the show, you probably are connected with Matt. So if you look for my name, David Lowe, you'll probably see on a mutual connections list. Happy to talk, happy to share. I like being involved. I like talking and supporting and growing myself and others. So please reach out.
Yes, and that's why I reached out to both of you, because I see you doing this in our communities, helping people, lifting people up, and showing the way forward. Thank you so much for taking some time to be on Ticket Volume. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And thank you, David. It's been wonderful
great to
being on
meet
podcast
you.
with you.
And for our
I've
audience,
got some feedback for your bingo. Expect to see
excellent.
some stuff.
Yes.
Nice. A new reader, subscriber, ding.
Ding.
And for our audience, you can subscribe to our podcast too. Just hit the subscribe button down there. And did you know that you can change and improve this podcast by leaving a comment as well, or DMing me, or shouting it out on the internet? I'm sure I'm going to find it. And if you're on Spotify, check out our surveys, leave a comment. These are all just ways to turn up the ticket volume. And speaking of ticket volume, did you know that this podcast is brought to you by InvGate? InvGate is a fit-for-purpose service management solution with integrated asset management designed to let you focus on supporting your organization without waiting for administrators to make the necessary changes that you need for your teams to be functional. In fact, IT teams from Toyota, NASA, and McDonald's use InvGate to manage requests, automate workflows, and centralize inventory data so that they can focus on delivering better service, because good service is good business.